Hello, you guys. This is Josh Vision, and I'm here to give my Season 1, Episode 4 review of Peaky Blinders. So, in this episode, there's like 3 to 4 main conflicts that are happening. One is John's intended marriage to the prostitute Lizzie. So, when he tells his brothers and his aunt, due to Lizzie being, a prostitute like I mentioned beforehand, it's not really going well. Well, it's not really well received. And they're kind of making jokes about it, and John's very adamant about it. He's like, he wants to get this done. He loves Lizzie, and also the fact that he has 4 children and that they need a mother. So out of all of them, out of all the ones who are not only laughing but also taking this very serious and kind of taking jabs about this whole potential marriage, Tommy's the most resistant against it. So what I found interesting about this is really the main reason why he's against it. And the main reason is basically due to the fact that after the war, so for probably the past like 2 years or so, him and Lizzie actually were having like an affair. Well, not really an affair. He was going to her, basic prostitution style. So he was very against it, obviously, because one, why are you going to try to marry my brother when you and I have a sexual relationship and you didn't even tell him about us? I mean, if you're going to marry each other, you got to be honest, at least for the most part. So she said, well, that was in the past. So basically, Tommy pays her off. They do it one last time. So after they do it one last time, he lets his brother John know about them. And John, obviously, when he finds out, he's pissed off about it. But eventually, as brothers do, they may argue, they may fight. But eventually, they do make peace with each other. So in regards to the whole Freddie Thorne, Ada, and Chief Inspector Campbell storyline. So we see the guy who Freddie is kind of in cahoots with in regards to the whole communist revolution, all this BSery. So we meet Mr. Chapman. So I believe Ada mentioned after the meeting that Freddie's doing all the work, basically. He's taking all the risks, basically, to get this thing up and flowing and gaining all the traction and people, that's needed. So not long after that, we have this meeting between Chief Inspector Campbell and Tommy, in which Tommy's like, listen, Freddie is not that big a deal. He's not the main guy. Let's get Chapman, or you get Chapman. Chapman has around $200,000 or pounds, no, 200,000 pounds worth of cash that he got from the Russian government. So he's the biggest fish to fry. So if I give you this, I need your word that you're going to make sure that you're going to allow my sister, who's pregnant, and Freddie to leave town. So the chief's like, okay, deal. And then after this, he says some really effed up crap. Because we already know how he views the Peaky Blinders. Basically a scum, hood rats, stuff like that, and murderers, so on and so forth. Which is kind of ironic considering going, back into the episode's history in regards to Chief Inspector Campbell's, track record. He was known for being vicious of how he handled things over in Belfast, which is not too different from how the Peaky Blinders have been portrayed and done, throughout the series in terms of their reputation. So it's kind of hypocritical, in my opinion. But he basically says that if he were to be fired by Churchill, that on his last day, as being chief inspector or whatever, he would make sure that he would basically have the brothers killed off and beaten up with mallets, and have Ada and Freddie killed, and even cut out the baby and kill the baby. He doesn't care about the baby. And that he would only save Finn, the youngest brother of the Shelbys, and put him in prison with the adults. Now that is what really made Tommy, who's usually cool, calm, collected, snap. And he pulled out his gun, and he was really contemplating shooting this fool right then and there. Now, he stopped. He stopped because he realized this is what Campbell wanted to do. He wanted to get in his head, because so far in this relationship, Tommy's had the upper hand and everything. He's had the bigger, in terms of the situation and running everything basically. So Campbell had to even the playing field, even though it was a effed up way of doing it in terms of psychological warfare. He got his point across. And I really do think he meant every word he said. So after that, we have this whole scene with Tommy and Grace at the church. And Tommy lets Grace know straight off the bat that, listen, I know you're a liar. And for one reason, I know you're a liar because any Catholic girl, if they go into a Catholic church, they're going to do the sign of the cross. That's a given. And also, there are other things you lied about. But since I know you're a liar, and since I know that you're actually good with numbers, since my brother told me, and I have been observing you over these last couple months or so, I want you essentially to be the secretary and keeping all accounts of the money, since Billy Kimber's man basically does the same thing for him. And the only reason, another reason why I want to do this is, in fact, I believe he also kissed her actually after that, basically showing his attraction to her, and also we know she's attracted to him as well. So not long after this particular scene, we have Grace meeting up with Chief Campbell again at the museum, I believe, or some art place, whatever. And he wanted to make sure to her that, listen, the hardest thing about being an undercover is not getting sucked into the lifestyle of these enemies. These are guys are nothing but hoodlums, murderers that cut each other's, that's known for cutting people's ears off and so on and so forth. So she's listening, but you can tell she's not really paying attention because, once again, she's actually in the thick of it, and she's learning more and more about these guys as human beings, not just as this gang of murderers and abusers, blah 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 blah, all that good crap. So we have this whole thing with John getting married, and the reason why he gets married, not to Lizzie, the prostitute, is mainly due to this deal that Tommy makes with, I believe, the matriarch of the Lee family. And since, Tommy and his brothers are half gypsy, I believe, that's how he was able to sort of convey or at least gain some type of pact with her. And also the fact that he said, listen, Kimber, even though I'm working with him, I intend to take him out and replace him. So, and even though we're enemies, at least according to Kimber, I want to work alongside you because we're kin. And also, once again, I want to take over, Kimber's place as the top legal betting guy in town or so, or at least in the country. So, the marriage contract, basically, like I mentioned before, is just a pact. It's an agreement sealed in blood, literally, as when John, and I believe the girl's name is Esme, I believe. I could be wrong. When the marriage is basically official, they cut each other's hand and they hold it like as a blood pact, basically. So you have this marriage celebration. So before this even happens, we see that Ada has actually made it to the wedding, and her and Tommy are back on good terms for the most part. So during this marriage, during celebration, she actually gives birth, or her water breaks. So she gives birth, and I believe at her house with Aunt Pole and some other woman, and Freddie comes back. So when Freddie comes back and sees the birth of his son, that's when he's arrested by the police. So once this happens, we see everything at first from the Shelby perspective, and Tommy, everyone knows that Tommy's very happy, much more, like I said before, like happy and upbeat ever since Grace and him's been sort of, together, or at least since the appearance of Grace. So when Aunt Pole comes, it almost smacks the hell out of Tommy. She says, I know that you called the cops, on Freddie. So what I thought was very interesting how the episode ended was the fact that it showed a really good close-up of both Tommy and Grace's face. So I don't think it was Tommy that did it. I think Grace did it. I think Grace called the cops on Freddie. Because remember, Grace is working under Chief, Inspector Campbell. So, yeah. So another thing besides that's happened this episode is major is the fact that due to their work relationship, now the Shelby family actually have a legal gambling license. So now their operations are now legitimate. So I believe that's everything that happened in this episode. So if I missed anything, please let me know in the comment section. And thank you guys for watching. Adios, and have a good one.